KCAU TV and the Major 9 News present Profile 9, opening the door to events and issues affecting the people of Siouxland.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of Profile 9 on this day after Christmas. We hope you had a Merry Christmas. And today we're going to talk about something that's near and dear to us here at the Major 9. It's journalism education. And we're going to talk with the person who runs basically the department at Briar College, or who is involved to the extent where lots of students who have gone through here have a great deal of respect for him and tell us stories about how he has helped them in their career. His name is Ralph Swain. Ralph is an associate professor at Briar College, specializing in mass communication. Ralph, thank you very much for being with us today. We appreciate it. Tell us, first of all, Briar Cliff's Department in Mass Communication. Tell us about that, what kind of things it offers.
Well, the department currently has about 50 majors, and we have been pretty steady with 45, 55, right around that group since I came here about early 80s. We cover broadcasting. We also have a print emphasis. The print includes advertising, public relations, photography, and of course print journalism. The broadcast wing handles radio and television, both in front of the camera and behind the camera.
And you give them a good deal of experience, hands-on experience?
Yeah, I would say probably 50% of the classes are technical and the other 50% are theory. We have a good balance between theory and practice, and we have some excellent equipment too.
Who teaches beside you? Are you? I know you're not alone.
No, I'm not. Mike Crowley is the other full-time faculty member. He's chair of the department, and he is a professional photographer. He teaches the photography courses. He also teaches the desktop publishing courses and some of those other allied courses in the print area.
So everything under broadcast you basically handle?
Yes.
Is that fair to say? What got you started in education?
Well, when I got back from Vietnam, I enrolled for my master's degree at Colorado State University in Fort Collins, and there was a notice in the campus newspaper that indicated that the campus radio station was looking for students. What apparently happened is there was some political hassle with the management. They had a professional management staff, and then they had students work the other positions. And they had basically fired everybody and were rebuilding the staff. So I went in and told them I was interested in news. And within 2 months, they asked me to be news director, which means before I was getting no pay, it was volunteer, and then I got a whopping $100 a month as news director. So, and on the GI Bill, you know, I needed anything I could get. And so I started in radio news and really liked it, and stayed with it. After I graduated, I went into radio, commercial radio in Colorado.
Was your undergraduate major journalism?
No, the funny thing is, I had my undergraduate in political science, and my master's is in history. So I didn't have any formal communication background until later, until after I got into communications. I worked toward, working toward postgraduate credits. So, but it's just something that I fell into and really fell in love with.
But was the first, did you teach at Colorado State then, or did you go somewhere else first?
I ended up at one of Kurt Gowdy's radio stations, the NBC sportscaster. His alma mater is the University of Wyoming in Laramie, and they needed a news director, so I went up there and was hired. And the University of Wyoming journalism department needed a broadcast instructor part-time in their graduate program, so they asked me and I taught. So while I was news director at the station, I also taught graduate classes. And that's how I got into teaching.
How did you get to Briar Cliff?
Well, some interesting things happened at Wyoming. I fell into a story about poisonous soup. Back in 1968, the Bon Vivant Soup Company out of Newark, New Jersey, was selling soup that was contaminated with botulism. The federal government issued a worldwide recall. 6.5 million cans were recalled from Europe and the United States. 6 years later, 6 cans of the same soup are sitting on a supermarket shelf in Laramie. So I did the background work and did the story. When I aired the story, it just happened that the owner of the supermarket was driving back from Denver on his way to Laramie and had my newscast on and heard me mentioning his store. And he flew off the handle and jumped down the throat of my boss. And my boss, rather than saying, look, this is a health, life or death type of a story that we can't protect people, instead he ordered me to come into the newsroom the next morning, and he's going to set up these policies about any time a sponsor is mentioned in a news story, I have to clear it with his office. And I said, I don't work that way. The news department could care less who our sponsors are. The most important thing is what the public finds out and what we tell them. So I submitted my 2-week resignation, and it was during that 2-week period that just out of the blue, this 6 cans of poisonous soup showed up. And so I went ahead and did the story, and he told me not to air the story again. So as a good employee, I didn't. However, he didn't realize that I was a stringer, part-time reporter for Channel 9 in Denver. Mm-hmm. So I called up my photographer, who had one of these wind-up 60-millimeter Bolex cameras, and I said, get down to the Ideal Discount Supermarket and get me lots of B-roll, lots of supportive video, and I'll cut the audio track. And in those days, we cut the audio track on an audio cassette, take the 60-millimeter film, package it up, take it to the airport, and the next Frontier Airlines flight out of town goes to Denver. The TV station sends a courier on a motorcycle to the airport to grab the package, so it ends up on the evening news. Mm-hmm. So that's what I did. And it just so happened that Laramie has no TV signals. They watch Denver because they're so isolated. And my boss the next night is sitting at home watching the news, watching Channel 9 Denver, and here's my story. And he just totally blew his stack. And he said, I told you not to air the story. And I said, Andy, you told me not to air the story here at KOWB. He didn't say anything about Denver. He says, I didn't know you worked for Denver. I said, you never asked me. But that was the end of it. The end result was that it made the front page of the Wall Street Journal because of they activated my resignation. In other words, they fired me two days before my 2 weeks ended, okay, you know, as kind of a last effort to get out of paying, you know, workman's comp. And I did go to a hearing board, and they ruled in my favor, so I did get workman's comp. And by that time, I was teaching part-time, so they added some more courses to the curriculum and started teaching a heavier load.
What keeps you interested in broadcast education, let's say, as opposed to going back and trying to break some more stories like you did at Wyoming?
Well, I've done newspaper. I've done a lot of radio, about 15 years of radio, and 2.5 years TV with a CBS affiliate in Ohio. And, you know, I had 10, 15 years ago, I had ideas of wanting to go network and try the big time and stuff. But I have friends that are working at the network level, and they told me all about the good and the bad points. And when I got into teaching, I fell in love with it. I really enjoyed it because I saw a way for me to be able to pass on some of the experiences that I had to the students. And it really keeps you young when you teach.
After Wyoming, where did you go before you got to Sioux City?
I had 3 job offers back east, and I took the one that was at a Jesuit college in Wheeling, West Virginia. And I took it because there was a large federal grant that was bringing in new electronic equipment. See, this was at the transition period between film and videotape. So I took that position, and my salary basically was paid 100% for the 3 years I was there by the federal grant. And we started getting our new equipment in. The very first generation Hitachi video cameras and the old editing systems. And one afternoon, my wife was reading the want ads, and she saw this ad from WTOV TV in Steubenville, Ohio, which was about 25 miles north. They're looking for a reporter. She says, well, you've done newspaper, you've done radio, why don't you try reporting television? I said, well, okay, I will. And I went up there, and they hired me, and I was a weekend reporter for 2.5 years. And then in the summer, since I didn't teach in the summer, I worked full-time at the CBS affiliate. That was a real eye-opener. That whole area of the panhandle of West Virginia during the 70s was quite a place to be.
And it was new for you? I mean, you hadn't lived there before?
No, never lived there before.
And you were just saying before we started, lots of coal country news and the transitional there,
exactly, yeah. The steel mills were closing down. The coal mines, the underground mines had all closed down. They started to strip mine. The unions were having a lot of trouble with management, and I can remember going into a bar where in the southern part of Ohio where the coal miners hung out, and going in there with a TV camera to get a story, and tempers were really on edge. And I learned how to at first approach people and to gain their confidence rather than to barge in with the camera. I always left the camera in the car and went in there and started circulating and talking to people, find out who are the spokespeople in the crowd, and then approach them and tell them I want to do as honest a story as I can on this situation. Then they say, oh yeah, go ahead and bring the cameras in and the lights, and I'd go ahead and shoot the stories. But that was a crazy place, a real blue-collar place where there was a lot of crime, too. And the Ohio River, for a while there, while I was working there, there was about one body a month floating down the river. From a lot of it was small crimes and drug-related things. I can remember one story where a woman about 9 o'clock in the morning was driving from Wheeling, West Virginia to Steubenville, Ohio on her way to work. And she saw this big black limousine parked on the side of the highway. And as she looked over the bank, she saw these two well-dressed men carrying something wrapped in a blanket. It just looked very suspicious the way that thing was slung in the blanket. So she got to Steubenville and called the police, and that was a good 15 minutes later. The State Patrol went, and she knew how to identify because there was an old pickle factory along this highway, and she said it was right before you get to the pickle factory. And the state troopers got there and went down to the river, and sure enough, these gentlemen were so, I should say gentlemen loosely, were so bold that they didn't even put the body in the river. They just dropped it along the riverbank, and there was a body wrapped up in this blanket. And that was an interesting story, but there were tons of stories. Kathy Crumley, the first woman sheriff elected to Belmont County, Ohio, and she ended up on the Johnny Carson show 3 times. She was on Hee Haw 3 times. And all these strange things started to happen in Belmont County under her jurisdiction. 250 pounds of marijuana disappears from her evidence room, and the only people that have keys are herself and her chief deputy. Her bodyguard, who was a full deputy that drove her around in the patrol car, died of asphyxiation in her garage with the patrol car engine running and the garage door closed. Would you believe that when they buried the body, they never ran a test, blood test? And the mayor of the nearby town was so upset because he felt there was foul play that he tried to get an exhumation order to get the body exhumed. Couldn't do it. I can just tick off a whole bunch of things that happened during her 3-year reign.
An exciting time to be covering.
Yeah, and it's almost a kind of a story that I would like to, when I have time, write a book about. I'd like to go back there and research it, talk to her, talk to all the people. I think it'd be a fascinating book.
But it would be. We're going to take a break, come back and talk more with Ralph Swain, Associate Professor of Mass Communication at Briar College in Sioux City. Please stay with us here on Profile 9. If you're just joining us, we're visiting with Ralph Swain today. Ralph is the Associate Professor and Associate Professor in Mass Communications at Briar College. He has been telling us his career up until the time he got to Sioux City. You brought along a videotape to show us today, and with 45 to 50 or 50 majors at this time, what's the tape show that we can roll here and you can describe what we're going to see?
It's a 2.5-minute tape that shows some of the equipment we use. That's a scanner, photo scanner. We now can scan color and black and white photos. This is the Mac Lab, where the campus newspaper is put together. And what you're going to see on this tape is the editor is calling up the program called Quark Express, putting the tape cassette into the scanner, and it will then digitize it and put it on the screen. And it's a sports photograph. So what she's going to do, there it is now. It's rendering very quickly the photograph. Once it's on the TV, of course, you can crop it, do anything you want with it. manipulate the photo in any way. And you get into ethical problems there, too, about manipulation. This is basically showing the what we call dummying up the paper. You always have to start with a dummy so you know where the elements are going to go, and this is being done on a light table. Since we're computerized now, everything is done electronically from that point on, including the photographs, as I said. And now this is shot at the Star Publishing in South Sioux City, where the campus newspaper, in fact, that is the Cliff News coming off the press. So it's at that point that the tape is taken over there. This is the campus radio station. Everything you see on this tape we did not have in 1980. This is the production room of the campus radio station. We have a satellite downlink capability on the campus. And we also have Origination. This is the Origination studio for Channel 41, which we share with Morningside, Western Iowa Tech, and the school district. TV production facility. This is the control room where the equipment is in the TV studios. That's our equipment room. A lot of things look pretty much like what you see here. This is a two-person crew doing an interview. It's now being edited. I think there's going to be a couple of glitches here. Getting ready for the newscast, and
see that here
ending,
time to time.
Yeah, ending with the beginning of the newscast. We also do interview shows.
And you brought along a camera, is that right?
Well, this is our latest acquisition.
Very nice looking
It's
piece of
a super video VHS system, which eliminates the 28-pound recorders that we had to carry and the cables. It's all built in, and it has many more features than the cameras that we currently have, even though our current cameras are $10,000 cameras, and they work well, but they're tube cameras. These have what are called chips, CCDs, and it has 8 different shutter speeds for shooting high speed, shooting computer screens without getting the noise bar, just all kinds of neat attachments, time code for editing and so forth. So this is our first acquisition under a new format. We're going from 3/4 to the Super VHS system. It's going to be it's going to get its test this fall.
You're going to entrust this with students, huh?
Yeah, we'll have to do that.
One of the things that I always found beneficial to me was in college the kind of hands-on experience that I could get in addition to the theory that I would get. How important is that to you and in what you do with your students?
Actually, the hands-on is critical in this profession, as it is in quite a few other professions. I wouldn't be teaching at Briar if it was strictly theory. I went to University of Pittsburgh for several years, working on my postgraduate credits, and that was all theory-oriented. There was no opportunity to get your hands on any kind of equipment. The interesting thing at Pittsburgh, too, is that what they were doing is graduating PhDs as fast as they could, because the PhDs then go into teaching at big universities. Right around the corner from the Cathedral of Learning, which was the main learning center for the University of Pittsburgh, were the studios of one of the most active public broadcasting systems, QED in Pittsburgh, which does a high percentage of the public broadcasting documentaries and other tapes that you see on Channel 27 here in Sioux City. And yet there was no relationship or no contact at all. I thought, what a wonderful way, you know, to work your students into this fantastic production center. But that wasn't the purpose of the University of Pittsburgh Communications Department. We are a career-oriented department. We have double the national average of journalism schools in placing our students in jobs within 6 months of graduation. And I really feel that there's many reasons for that, but the internship program is key. The equipment is key. Students get their hands on the equipment. They get internships here and other media outlets in Sioux City, and
is that a requirement? Internship?
It's required. They have to do 2 interns. Total of 6 hours, 6 credit hours. It comes out to about 300 working hours. Yeah.
When you look at the profession now and the way it changes, do you have to then adjust your curriculum to try and keep up with those changes?
Yeah,
around?
absolutely.
And it's got to be difficult, I would assume, with equipment, if nothing else.
Yeah. The toughest is the equipment. I can always upgrade my lecture notes and so forth, but the equipment is the expensive part. We got almost $250,000 in equipment 3 years after I came here in 1983, and it ran for 3 years. And that's how we acquired the radio station, the satellite system, full-color TV facility, and the field equipment, and computers, and darkroom, the whole ball of wax. And now we're about 10 to 12 years down the road. The use and the wear is showing its time on this equipment. So we're now phasing in newer equipment. And fortunately, the newer equipment is better. Better equipment, and believe it or not, it's even cheaper.
And smaller
It's
in
cheaper.
many cases,
Yeah.
too. Thank goodness. We're going to take another break, come back, and continue our conversation with Ralph Swain at Briar College today. We hope you will stay with us. We'll be right back. Ralph, your students, you're preparing them to go out in the real world. Our journalism business, especially in television journalism, has changed dramatically just in the time I've been in television since the late 70s. We seem to, in many cases, have gotten away from the solid course of journalism, in my view, to the flash and trash kind of stories that titillate and grab viewers. How do you look at the profession now as you're sending kids into it? Still as honorable as you thought it was when you were back in Ohio covering stories?
I think the media go through stages, and it's always in transition. And you're right, we're in a period now of well, not only reality television with all the police shows on TV, and I don't mean the dramatic shows like NYPD, I'm talking about eyewitness video and cops and so forth. And the line between reality and staging is getting very gray and thin, and that's a concern that we have. We need to tell our students to know what their boundaries are as a journalist, and sometimes it seems like they don't have any. That is one of the reasons that we require them to take an ethics course in media, which is called social responsibility of the media. And we look at actual examples, both still photography, video, and radio, that have cases that have caused controversy and how they fell out as far as court cases that may have developed out of those. And we do a lot of role-playing and scenarios. I really like to do the scenarios. Mike Crowley likes to do the role-playing method of teaching. And what I do with the scenario method is I present these hypothetical cases, and then I have every student say, okay, you're the news director or you're the editor. You make a decision. And you've got 5-10 minutes to do it. How would you do this? Would you run it? Would you not run it? Would you run it but leave that out? Why? And it's great because we sit around for almost 70 minutes in these scenarios and throw things back and forth. My idea is not to tell them, you don't do this and you don't do that. My idea is to say, you've got to establish your ethical boundaries, because when it comes down to it, you have to live with your decision, whether you're a reporter or a news director. But you need to have some idea of when to stop, and that may depend from reporter to reporter. I resigned KOWB radio simply because I reached my limit. I am not going to work under the kind of constraints that the management was going to place on the news department. There were too many good things happening. There were too many important stories getting out, warning people about fatal possibilities. And so sometimes you have to make that decision, say, I'm not going to succumb to it. It works both ways.
Do you see a lessening of ethics in the journalism profession now?
There has been, to an extent, a lessening of ethics, yes. And
what's caused that, in your view?
Well, my idea in the case of broadcasting is, I hate to say this, but I really believe it's Reaganomics, and this is why I say that. In 1980, when the Republican administration came into power, one of the strong platforms of Reagan was to decentralize government and to deregulate. And part of the deregulation process was the Federal Communications Commission. So all these rules, many rules were thrown out. And there was a time period there when the FCC almost looked like it didn't have much power, or didn't want any power. And the media were starting to push the limits of the envelope, trying whatever they can. Now we're getting back into a period of re-regulation, which actually started under Bush, but Clinton is continuing to look heavily at re-regulation of the media, and that's a touchy issue.
Like the Fairness Doctrine?
Yes, right. Fairness Doctrine was thrown out as unconstitutional since 1949, being used and implemented. Broadcasters hated it, fought it, and it finally got thrown out. Now there's a move to get it back.
What do you think about that? Should it be brought back?
There's no less than 3 bills in Congress at any one time on an upgrade to the 1934 Communications Act, which we still work under, and re-regulation. I think certain things should be re-regulated. I do like the provisions that give the power to the public regarding the public file, that you can walk into a station during normal hours and look through the public file, and you can see what the letters of complaint are, what the network contract says. It's the public airwaves. It is not the station ownership's airwaves, unlike the presses, which are privately owned. And I think that's a good concept, as long as it doesn't constrain and have a chilling effect on news gathering. So it's a real delicate balance that has to be worked at.
All right. Well, I wish we had more time to talk. Unfortunately,
Yeah, we
we've
could
run out of
talk
time.
2 hours on it.
Exactly, just on those points alone. Thank you very much for being
you.
with us, Ralph. Best of luck to you there at Briar Cliff. Our guest today is Ralph Swain. Ralph is Associate Professor at Briar Cliff College in their Mass Communications Department. And if you have any questions, I'm sure Ralph would be glad to talk with you at Briar Cliff. Thank you for being with us on this day after Christmas on Profile 9. We hope you will join us again next Sunday here on KCAU. Thanks for being with us. Good afternoon.